The first few reactions for Avatar Fire and Ash is out right now, so let's see what people had to say. Avatar Theory here, hope you're doing well and having a fantastic day. And like I said, the first few reactions is out right now, as these comes from The Hollywood Reporter, which I will leave a link to in the description below. Now, press did have their first screenings on Monday, as that was when I saw the movie as well. And while I cannot give my full opinion just yet, there are some opinions here which I do agree with. Now, my review for the movie is coming December the 16th, but going over the first reaction, it comes from Eric Davis, which says, quote, James Cameron's Avatar Fire and Ash is a phenomenal movie-going experience. It's the biggest of the three, action-packed, visually jaw-dropping, and rich with themes of family, legacy, and survival. The way it weaves fire, water, air, and land into every nook and cranny of this film is kind of remarkable. This is pure blockbuster filmmaking at its finest. I love the way it brings all three films together in a story that finds the Sully family fighting to define what kind of family they truly want to be. It's about who you believe in more than what you believe in, and while it definitely feels like a conclusion to the trilogy, it also leaves the door open for future adventures. It's a confident, emotional close that highlights everything James Cameron does best: scale, heart, and sheer cinematic ambition. End quote. Now, I could definitely see a lot of points after having seen the movie, especially the fact where Eric points out that it feels like a conclusion to the trilogy but also leaves the door open for future adventures. And it's certainly the biggest of the three, which can be a good thing but can also be overwhelming, especially considering everything you need to take in. Now, the next one comes from Scott Mendelson, who says, quote, there's too much been there, done that in terms of plot beats and set pieces, but Avatar Fire and Ash is still an awe-inspiring technical and visceral achievement. It doesn't skimp on the melodrama or intensity, as James Cameron delivers a towering spectacle of such all-in splendor that it plays like it's the last movie that's ever going to get made. Yeah, this third Avatar rocks. End quote. Now, this opinion is a bit of a mixed bag, as in one side it talks about a rehash of what's been seen before, but also being a spectacle to experience. And like with the previous statement, it is certainly the biggest one of the three, but there are a lot of plot beats that we've seen before, and you have to keep in mind that Cameron did say at one point that The Way of Water and Fire and Ash was essentially originally planned as one movie, but it's spread over two movies, which makes some of these statements a bit more understandable. Going on to the next one is from Bill Brea, who says, quote, Avatar Fire and Ash is a knockout, an epic that delivers on an enormous scale, with the characters and world building paying off surprising dividends. It's a delight to see a film be this big while still being a narratively and visually bold work of science fiction, the best one yet. End quote. Now, I've seen a lot of people say that Fire and Ash is the best one of the three, and while it's certainly the biggest one and the longest one, there are some points to discuss whether or not it is a standout of the trilogy. Going on to the next one, Simon Thompson said, quote, with Avatar Fire and Ash, master storytelling and visionary filmmaker James Cameron again delivers a hyper-real experience that is emotional and exhilarating, repeatedly and exhaustively raising its own bar. This is an audacious feast that delivers more than anyone ordered. End quote. Again, touching on the point that this is the biggest one of the three. Next up, Courtney Howard said, quote, Avatar Fire and Ash, 3 films in, James Cameron still has the sauce, making the epic spectacular feel emotionally impactful. A glorious saga, bold, brilliant, and awesome in every way. This is what movie theaters were built for. Payakan is still my fave, but Vrang is the MVP. End quote. Vrang certainly makes an impact in the movie, and Payakan is still awesome as before, but there are some other characters which I do want to touch on, and I'll talk about that in my full review. The Holophile said, quote, Avatar Fire and Ash is a monumental cinematic achievement. Astonishing, boundary-pushing visuals are accompanied by an enthralling narrative filled with poignant commentary and genuinely moving character work. by far the best Avatar movie. Epic, ambitious, heartfelt, a must-see." End quote. Also another person that says Avatar Fire and Ash is the best one of the three. Certainly an ambitious movie, with some tear-jerking moments for sure. Eric Goldman said, quote, "Avatar Fire and Ash is another visually fantastic epic that also contains a couple of the most emotional moments in the series. On the other hand, I had some issues with the third act, and Way of Water remains the peak for me. But damn, Cameron delivers spectacle like no one else." End quote. So here's a bit of a different opinion. While he says that Fire and Ash has the most emotional moments, he does prefer The Way of Water, which I can understand because, like I said, Fire and Ash does repeat some beats of the previous movies, so I can see why he says that The Way of Water is the best one of the trilogy. Then looking at a bit more of a negative opinion, or somebody that wasn't as impressed by the movie, Josh Parham says, quote, "Avatar Fire and Ash is overstuffed with a lot of plot, further dragged down by repeating familiar beats from the previous entries. But Cameron still delivers amazing spectacle with an intriguing, darker tone. There's novel concepts here I wish were more thoroughly explored." End quote. So even though Josh did state that the movie might be overwhelmed and also repeating familiar beats, he does say that the movie is a spectacle, which I feel everybody is saying. Like, even though the movie might be disappointing to some people, they would still say that you have to see this movie in the cinema, specifically in 3D, because that's the way the movie was made. Thomas from One Take News said, quote, "Avatar Fire and Ash is the most awe-inspiring movie I've seen all year. James Cameron continues to be a true visionary in cinema, but it's Weaver and Champion who are the heart and soul of this beautiful movie. Seeing this in anything but IMAX 3D should be a federal crime." End quote. Again, emphasizing on the fact that this movie needs to be seen in 3D and specifically IMAX if you have an IMAX theater near you. And scrolling over the other opinions, there's a lot of them on this page, so I'm not going to go through all of them in this video, but I recommend that you just take the time to read over all of them, as none of them contains any spoilers. And like I said, the general feel is that people who like this movie is going to say that it's the best one of the trilogy, and people who were a bit mixed on this movie might say the second or even the first movie will be the best one, and that this movie might be too much of retreading the same beats we've seen from previous movies, but you still have to see it in theaters. So in a way, even though they might not like the third one that much, they will still say that you need to see this one in the theaters because of its spectacle. And like I said, having seen the movie myself, I can understand that. And basically the first thing I did when I walked out of the cinema on Monday was I just wanted to walk right back in there and see it again, because there's just so much to take in, and I honestly cannot wait to see this movie again. Now, the movie is releasing December the 19th, but in certain countries like here in Norway, it's releasing December the 17th. And if you want my full review, you can keep an eye out on December the 16th, as I have a lot to say about this movie, and I will also have a spoiler review afterwards, going more into detail about some characters, some plot points, and just how it stacks up to the other two Avatar movies. But what are you hoping to see from Avatar Fire and Ash? Do you have your ticket yet? And which cinema will you be watching? Let me know in the comments below, and for more Avatar content, have a look at the rest of my channel. Until next time, have a fantastic day and stay safe.